Greetings. Again, this is Matt Field. We have had a little bit of delay in this most recent episode. Life is busy, I'll tell you what. Trying to keep up with everything, my regular job, all the different endeavors I'm pursuing. And then, of course, I am probably the only writing governor for the state of Utah. So, and there's a good reason for that. Again, check out my book/proposal at govmat.org, where you can learn basically everything I will stand for, everything that I will pursue. And I want to give you a quick overview of all of this. My priorities are, I have 8 priorities that I list. Now, there are many sub-points to each of those priorities. But the first priority is to ensure our liberty, our freedom to choose. And that includes reforming our current voting system, moving from the mail-in to in-person. That includes eliminating corruption. And I have an acronym for that, which is LAM-TED or lambasted. It stands for No More Professional Lobbying is the L. A is accountability program. I go into depth about that. M is accountability with money in the government. B is the bracket system. We remove the money from the election system and we work it more like March Madness as opposed to what we currently do. And basically it's a race to whomever can get the most money. And then we have the last portion, which is TED, which is T is term limits for not just elected officials, but also for people that are appointed by government, anybody that has any level of legislative power that can impose fees, etc. E is the elimination of parties, because frankly, I mean, the more and more, I didn't expand upon this as much in the book, but I'm learning more and more that if the parties are the power structure, they ensure who is going to get in and who is not at several different levels, and they control the money. And the only people that are interested, Deseret News, KSL, Fox News, doesn't matter who it is, they are mostly interested in the two parties and their structure, and they adhere to that power structure, which leaves no option for people like me and anybody else that's on the list. And then lastly is the D, which stands for decadence. We don't get people that are elected to any position or anyone that has been appointed, they don't get any special favors. They don't get any. Actually, currently in state law, there is some permissible level that allows you to collect on public benefits, which is wrong, of course. And then I move into my next number 2. My next one, I won't try not to dive so deep, but I only have a limited amount of time. Because if I go too long, you're not going to want to listen to me. But 2 goes into, basically aligns with the Second Amendment, which is our right to bear arms. But the part that no one ever talks about is we also have the right to form a militia, a well-organized, well-armed militia. And the state doesn't do anything to accommodate that. In fact, I believe to some degree it hinders it, and definitely in other states it hinders it. And I lay out some of a program, not entirely, but some of what the program would look like. From there, we move on to protecting our children. This has multiple subpoints again. I'm going to encourage you to go check that out. There are multiple subpoints to this, including school, which is a big one, something I'll discuss a little bit today in depth. Then it's M. Then I have another acronym I call Mount AJs. And for me, in order for me to discuss all these different things, I have to make these acronyms so I can remember them all. But M stands for Marriage and Tax Plan. I review that in depth. I go, and by the way, taxes are theft from the people. No one should be compelled to do anything. If I can't do it, then the government can't do it. Okay, I would love, I guess, corrupt centers of my mind, places wherever those are, I would love to compel people to pay me, but you can't do that. That's wrong. It's immoral, and everybody knows that, but they don't really think of it that way because they've grown up with that way. We need to move from a taxation system to an endowment system, and I expound upon that in my proposal. From there, I have T with the Mount T, which discusses tech and news in depth, and then we have AJs, which A stands for AI, and the process that we kind of need to deal with there. J stands for judicial legislation from the bench. There are multiple things that are taken. It is kind of a shorter section that I have there, but the various things that are taking place, especially if you look at Trump, the things that have been permitted, the kind of the legislating from the bench that has taken place, the extending of various particular laws that in theory should have already been expired. They shouldn't be able to prosecute him on any of them, even if he was guilty, though they haven't been able to provide any evidence to that effect either. But anyway, so that's the judicial, and the last one is Great Salt Lake, which largely the state has just overmined lithium in the Great Salt Lake. It's not dying because of climate change. It's not, especially when you look around the entire state and you see, record highs in lakes and rivers and things like that. So that's a preview to all of them. Please take the time, go to govmat.org, get informed, understand what can happen. And then if I'm your guy, after you've read all those things, write in Matt Field for governor when you receive your ballot. The preference would be is that you actually go to the polling stations and write it in there in person rather than sending in a ballot. But I understand that there are a handful of people that might need to use that service, and I'm not entirely against that if it's really well structured and there's a chain of custody and there's all these different things that exist. But right now that isn't the case. So I want to start off with something that is kind of near and dear to my heart. There's a record low. This is an article out of the Deseret News. There is an actual record low, at least according to the administrator that's over it, of foster families. And I won't go into why this is so important to me exactly. When it comes to family life, I like to keep it there and not make it public. But there is a need for people to come out and take care of kids that have found themselves in very difficult situations. Those of you that are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there's the family proclamation, and every child has the right to be born within the bonds of matrimony and be reared by a father and mother that honor marital vows with complete fidelity. Unfortunately, that isn't what happens far too frequently. And in many ways, there's not a lot that can be done about that, other than educating and helping people in that regard. The problem is, the issue here is that the governor has decided to go kind of a theocracy route, right? He's asking churches to speak about this in their congregations. Now, I'm not someone who is. God is a massive and important part in government, okay? But to utilize religions to broadcast a particular message, that's where things can get a little bit dicey. And when the religious institutions come forward and they do exactly what the governor wants them to do, that's also a problem. We can't be in that habit. Now, I'm certainly not against the idea of us moving forward and helping promote foster care. You know what a great thing would be is you eliminate the taxes of those families to incentivize them to get involved. Now, they have to go through the entire training, so don't worry about that. And it's pretty rigorous to become a foster care individual in the state of Utah. But the most important thing is that if we want to incentivize people to get involved, then the government can't just come forward and say, we need you to give more. They need to stop taking from us. I get so tired, and it's just ridiculous how frequently the government asks more from us when they do nothing themselves. I mean, you look at how the housing situation has surged, you look at how inflation is roaring, and what does the government do? Instead of looking at the situation that various individuals find themselves in and maybe pulling back on the taxes, maybe pulling back on the property taxes, or doing whatever they can to ease the issues that are taking place in society today, they take advantage. I guarantee you, basically everybody in the state of Utah, if you look at your sales, or not your sales tax, but your property tax over the last couple of years, it has skyrocketed. And it's large, but the government doesn't care. They say, hey, if the money is there, we're taking it. We're going to do whatever we can. And by the way, you are obligated to pay this tax. And if you don't, then the government theoretically could auction your home off. Somehow they own your home even though they took no part whatsoever in the process of building it, other than making you register it, making you do all these different things. It's incredible the reach the government has, and then they ask us to give more when they're unwilling to give anything at all. So, but I would love to plug myself that people should look into doing foster care if you haven't done that before. It is very rewarding. I understand that, if you've got your own kids and it's a tough spot, I understand that, but there are many people that would benefit, many kids that would benefit, and other people that would benefit by caring for these children. Anyway, this kind of leads me into the school thing that I was talking about earlier. The public schooling program, and I talk about this in my book, but if you look at basically every indicator that is offered by the public school districts and by just the education board in general, you'll find that in any given subject, only 50% or less, in some cases a little bit higher, but most of the time 50% or less of our kids aren't proficient in it. So, and of course, if you know how grades work, you know that if you got a 50% in any of your schools, that would be an F. Okay, that's an F percentile. Now, but for some reason, we continue to say, hey, well, if we pay the teachers more money, then they're going to do better. No, it doesn't make any difference. These teachers are going to continue to teach the way they teach. There are very, very good teachers, extremely good teachers, and there are very, very bad teachers. And the fact remains that only half, and most of the time less than half, of the kids that are being taught in our public school systems are responding to the teaching style. But that is one of the smaller aspects associated here. In reality, the biggest problem is that we have, instead of encouraging innovation, instead of encouraging a pathway that has never been taken, the entire process is geared towards doing well on a state exam, doing well on, or having high class attendance, doing well on, higher proficiency and all these different things. And the government has basically defined through the public schooling system that this is the standard and you need to live up to this standard. When in all reality, they do not know what they're talking about. And I have a quick clip right here that I want to share that is pretty compelling with this. So let me pull that up, and it's just going to walk through that entire process and why what we are doing to our kids currently is just so bad. It's just so bad.
30s, there was a little girl named Jillian Lynn. All of her teachers reported that she had what they called a learning disability. Because of this, Jillian's mother took her to a physician to have her evaluated. At the doctor's office, after the evaluation, the doctor asked the mother to step outside the room. He turned on the little radio so Jillian had something to listen to. As the mother and the doctor stood outside of the office window, they looked inside to find her dancing around the room. The mother asked the doctor, "What is wrong with my daughter?" He said, "There's nothing wrong with your daughter. She's a dancer. Take her to a dance school." Jillian's mother took her to the dance academy in town. Jillian went on to become one of the world's most famous choreographers, doing such famous Broadway plays as Cats, Phantom of the Opera, and many more. I implore all of you to look self-doubt and the doubt of others directly in the face and begin to dance. Whether dancing is starting a business or leaving a bad relationship, I can assure you of one thing. Eventually in life, the music always stops. And what a shame indeed if you've never even tried to dance.
So, that's a great clip. Basically showing that when we have these situations where we are in public school, or, this is applicable across the board in our lives, but when we have these situations in school where teachers are saying, oh, they have a problem here, they have a problem there, they can't learn this, they can't learn that, and they basically break down a child and they put them in a particular box, and that they have these certain inabilities, and instead of allowing them to, for sake of the metaphor, dance, they need to be able to stretch their legs, they need to be able to get out there, they need to understand these things. And often, unfortunately, the stigmatism associated with homeschooling or something like that is completely wrong. It used to be, people believed, they still believe, it's not they used to, they still believe that if you homeschool your child, that most likely they don't read very well, most likely they don't know their arithmetic very well, they don't know how to do math, they don't know how to do all these basic skills, and that's a complete lie. It's a total and complete lie. Anyone that has gone through this process to school their kids and has taken on the responsibility, which is your responsibility, to train your kids and to help them understand what it is they have to do in their lives to be successful, not at your particular level or at some sort of societal level, but if they want to be successful in their lives, they need to learn some level of arithmetic, learning how to read. They need to know how to communicate in society. They need how to do these different math problems and all these different things. Those basic skills are needed. And it reminds me of a scripture we talk about in Doctrine and Covenants. I don't know if you aren't familiar with Doctrine and Covenants. It's anyway, I encourage you to go check it out. You can Google it. You'll find it in a second. But there's in section 58, it talks about how this is God speaking, and he says, "For behold, it is not meet that I should command in all things. For he that is compelled in all things, the same is a slothful and not a wise servant. Wherefore he receiveth no reward. Verily I say, men should be anxiously engaged in a good cause, and do many things of their own free will, and bring to pass much righteousness." And so we need to be agents unto ourselves. We have to be able to move forward and do what we need to do to accomplish what we need to do in this life and to bring about what we were designed to do, right? Where we're designed to dance, where we're designed to inspire, those sorts of things are going to happen no matter what. The problem is that right now the government doesn't permit innovation. It trains us how to be basically employees, right? Another analogy I want to provide here is that I'm a huge animal fan, particularly with big cats, and there's something you'll notice across all mammals is that they will teach their young how to hunt, how to provide for themselves. And you think, oh, well, that's what we do. We do the same thing. No, we don't actually do that. Because you'll see a mother lion, a lioness, a leopard, or whatever. They'll go and catch a infant calf of some kind. And they'll bring it back to the child, and they'll teach them how to hunt this particular animal. And it's a process. They don't get it the first time. It takes some time for them to finally understand how they're going to eat. We definitely teach our kids how to make food. We definitely teach them how to, go to where to get that food and all that sort of thing. Definitely not at the primal level. But we don't actually teach them how to get money on their own. We don't teach them how to sustain their lives in society today. We say you need to find a third party that will pay you. That's always what we do. We don't teach them different things they can do to earn money on their own. We teach them specifically that they have to make sure that they go to a third party to learn their education, go to a third party to have those people watch your kids, go to a third party to make sure that you can, make enough money to provide for all of these things. We're always outsourcing our responsibilities rather than taking them on ourselves. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to be a business owner, but what I am saying is that people need to understand that when there isn't a job, when there isn't anybody to provide for them, they need to be able to do it on their own. And there are a million different ways to do that. It's just a matter of taking the initiative, getting rid of those public school shackles, and moving forward to do something great in your life. Which leads me to kind of my next point here. And this is a clip I'm going to cut off a little short because this clip is Jordan Peterson. He gets a little leaks a little profanity in there, so I'm going to cut a little short. But he makes a really, really good point here, and I want you to hear it.
I tell young men, it's like, find something difficult to do. You need that. You're not built for comfort or pleasure. Like, if that comes along, good. If you have a day where you're comfortable and there's some things around you that give pleasure, have some sense and enjoy it. But don't be thinking that's what your life is aimed at. That's contemptible. Everyone knows that. And if they orient themselves in that hedonistic direction, there's nothing in it but shame. No one is proud of themselves for using pornography.
And that's why I'll stop it right there. But he's saying that no one is proud of themselves for using pornography. Nobody's proud of themselves if they log into Netflix and watch TV all day. Nobody's proud of themselves if they just do nothing. You need to find hard things to do. The problem is we seek And what has been portrayed in society is that we need to seek, we need to earn a bunch of money. And how does that happen? We don't know. So we just do the very bare minimum and we skirt by and we enjoy as many pleasures as we possibly can because we don't know how to find joy. We don't know how to enjoy ourselves in the right way. And the best way that that happens is that we have to work. We have to do hard things. And will they cause stress? Will they cause anguish? Will they? Of course they will. Of course they will. But you will be proud of your accomplishments when you are done. It doesn't matter if you make billions of dollars. It doesn't matter if you're recognized across the world. Those things don't matter. What matters is that you are doing hard things for the benefit of people you love instead of just casting out a line and hoping something bites. We have to move forward in changing these different concepts and ideas of what's happening in our schooling system, what's happening in society. And I have one more clip here that I wanted to share, but this is the epitome. Well, actually, I've got two more clips, but this is the epitome of those that have worked to do really hard things versus those that have been essentially been given many things that they have. And this is the contrast that I want to provide. One of these is a story that I want to share, and I'm going to expound upon that, and then I'm going to give you the next angle on it. Here you go.
Taxi driver in New York City picks up one of the wealthiest men, very, very well known in New York City. Drives a gentleman across town, very wealthy individual, thanks the taxi driver very politely, pays him exact fare, and hands him a $20 tip. Before the gentleman can even get out of the vehicle, the taxi driver says, "Sir, can I ask you a question?" He said, "Of course." Sits back down. "I drove your son yesterday across town. The fare was very similar, and he actually gave me a $200 tip. If you don't mind me asking, you're one of the wealthiest men in New York City. Why did you only give me $20? And he said, "Well, that's an easy one, my friend." He said, "My son has a multimillionaire as a father. I was an orphan." Everybody wants to be handed $1 million, and here's the deal. You don't know what to do with it.
I'm going to cut it off right there, but basically he makes a perfect point, is that they have a misconception of what has to take place. If you do something great, if you go from being an orphan to being wealthy. Now, again, I frown upon always seeing these examples of people that are successful because they've obtained a lot of money. That's false. That's 100% false. Now, have they achieved some hard things? Definitely. But it isn't measured by the number of dollars you have. So that's the one disclaimer I'd want to put on this. But the fact remains true, is that here's a guy who came from nothing and built himself up into something, whereas his son had it all to begin with, and he doesn't really know what to do with all that money and all that, basically that privilege he was born into. And that is something that is lost on most people, and frankly is lost on most politicians. They go into government and they are provided with the most money you possibly could have ever, right? And they spend it into oblivion, believing that they're doing something that's good, but in all reality, they're not understanding that by giving this and that and all these different programs to people, you are limiting their ability to reach out and take care of themselves, okay? We have to begin to understand this concept. Otherwise, society is doomed. I mean, in terms of the federal government, I don't think there's a lot that can be done there. The only way that we are really going to take back our country is if we have people, governors, other legislators and government officials and the people backing them, that they want to really wield the 10th Amendment to ensure that we can stop the overreach, we can stop all these heinous things from taking place in our government. So, I mean, that's the one side, right? Where you have a guy who comes from nothing, and that nothing could be just as easily a kid who was an orphan, who was an amazing father, who took care of their kids and provided for them and did all these things. That is amazing. And you don't necessarily need to be an orphan to do that either, right? Doing hard things is what's going to make us happy. It's what's going to make us feel good. It's what's going to improve society and move us forward. Now, here's the contrast, okay? This is in relation to the Hamas, whatever you want to call them, basically just insanity. This is something, and this is not uncommon to see, okay? This is not uncommon to see. So watch this and listen.
Man, this kid is doing the Lord's work.
Welcome to Gaza graduation. Let's see how much students actually know what they stand for. First question, have you guys chanted from the river to the sea?
Yes.
Okay, which river, which sea?
So
you don't know that?
No.
And the answer was the Mediterranean and the Jordan. What does Hamas say their number one goal is according to their charter?
They just want to free Palestine.
To murder all Jews around the world. How many years did Israel occupy Gaza?
Late 1800s, the entire time.
Since 48. It was actually under Egyptian control for the first 20 or so years, and then Israel actually left Gaza in 2006.
I'm shocked. Wait, they left?
I love it when I see people get exposed. All these people chanting, free Palestine, free Palestine. They have no idea what they're talking about. They have no idea. They haven't even tried. They haven't even done any research. They don't even care. And they spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to get an education, and they dumb.
That guy's funny. But it's true, though. The problem right now, what's taking place is you have a bunch of kids that, I mean, especially at Columbia University. I mean, to get into Columbia University is going to be difficult. And then to pay the tuition is going to be extremely difficult. And most likely they have massive amounts of support from their parents who have deep, deep pockets. And then when they go there, they think they're doing something righteous by walking around and saying these different things. But in all reality, they don't even know what they're saying. They don't know that Hamas's number one goal is to kill all Jews. And when they realize that, they say, oh, really? And I've just been protesting this. I've been standing for this for the last who knows how many weeks. But they don't actually know what they're doing. And this is one of the problems that we have also in society, is not only that we don't do things that are hard, but we don't know why we're doing them. We have to be well informed. We can't allow everyone to tell us. And that's another problem. We're always going to the third party. When we see the news come across the board, we presume and we hope that what they're saying is true. And I'm sorry to say, but for the most part, they aren't. They aren't true. What they're saying is not true. A lot of things that go through news is solely propaganda. And it doesn't benefit us. It doesn't benefit our children. It doesn't benefit the people that are hearing it. We have to know what's right. We have to know what's wrong. And we have to be willing to stand for what is true. And I encourage the same thing with me. I provide all the references in my book/proposal for governor. And I encourage you to look at every single one of them, criticize them, critique them, find out if there's a better source, find out whatever it may be. Do what you have to do. But do not rely upon me. Do not rely upon the media. Do not rely upon any of those people. The only person you really should be relying upon is God. And I know that people say, well, you have to have separation of state and God, and that's not true. That's not even close to true. Okay, now we can't have one religion that dominates the entire. We can't create a theocracy with the government. That's not our place. But, however, if you do not believe that God didn't have a massive influence in the establishment of this country and this state, then you are woefully uninformed yet again. Okay. And I want to give this example one more time. There was something that was very interesting that I heard. I'm going to do another shout out. I love this podcast. It's called Ancient Traditions. The gal that hosts it is Jack Logan. I believe that she's a professor out of Yale University. But she said something that was very, very profound, and it really affected me. In referencing people like David, King David in the Old Testament, when he was chosen to be king because he was going to act in God's name. He was going to follow God's commandments. He was going to do what he had to do in order to uplift the people and to promote morality and make sure those things happen. And she gives multiple others, Solomon and other people that did the same sort of thing. And the same thing is true if you remember the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the Book of Mormon. And if you aren't, go check it out. But it basically refers to people when they are brought in to serve as king or whatever, that they are actually called of God to do these things. Now that obviously hasn't maintained across history, and people haven't decided to stand for moral principles, and they've gone contrary to them. But that was the original purpose. And when I reflect upon that, and I reflect upon that here in the United States today, the same thing happened. The forefathers wanted this same sort of thing to happen. But obviously they weren't going to have God select the particular ruler. They weren't going to have God select the president. They were going to have the people select the president, trusting in God that they would do the right thing. So theoretically, in my view, We should be selecting people that are going to be righteous, that are going to uphold God's laws, uphold God's morality. And when that happens, we are going to be able to basically remain in a peaceful state. The problem is that hasn't happened. And people haven't been thinking that way because they're influenced by parties, they're influenced by particular issues, and they are separating entirely their godlike, those godlike qualities from government. They think that one should not be associated with the other when it's completely false. And you know how I know that's false? Look at what the forefathers said, that all the rights that are protected in the Constitution are unalienable rights, and that they are not provided by the government, but they are protected by the government because they are given by God. And what is the motto of the United States? In God we trust. This nation was established by God through individuals that knew that if God was removed from society, that it would crumble. And it's the same thing with the state of Utah. The members of the Church of Jesus Christ, our pioneer brothers and sisters, they came across the plains to come to Utah so that they could worship the way that they wanted to worship and that they wouldn't be discriminated against. And so there are so many reasons why we have to begin to think this way to prevent terrible things to happening in the future. And they're coming. They're coming no matter what. And what I propose, and I mentioned that in my book, what I'm proposing is that we do everything we can to be prepared to endure the hard times in abundance of morality. So I thank you for listening. I encourage you to go read and listen to my book. We have it translated into Spanish. I haven't been able to find someone in Spanish to read it yet, but so you can't listen to it in Spanish, but you can read it, and you can listen or read it in English. And you can download it or you can listen to it on Rumble. Either way, but please go listen to it. Determine if I'm your guy. If I am, and write in Matt Field for governor. If not, then no harm, no foul. I'm not going to force or try and convince you to do otherwise, but I do think that it's worth a listen and that you owe it to yourself and your families to understand who you're voting for and why you're voting for them. Again, I thank you and have an amazing week.